Hello, my name is Eric Sagoda, and I'm going to be doing a presentation about John Locke, who is an educational philosopher and political philosopher in the 17th century. Or, yes, 17th century. John Locke was born in Rington, England in 1632, and he passed away in 1704, a few decades before our own American Revolution that was heavily influenced by his ideals. He grew to become a respected scholar, scientist, and philosopher, and educationalist with many ideas about the philosophy of mind and individualism specifically. Some of his more well-known works are Some Thoughts Concerning Education, which was published in 1693, and an essay concerning human understanding, which was published in 1689. The educational philosophy of John Locke consisted of the philosophy of mind, where he discussed the combination of soul, understanding, and person as being facets of the mind, with his writings reflecting this ideal in his works regarding the education of the individual. This is where I come to my first critique that was from another author, which states, well, Locke's unstable usage of the term mind prevents us from claiming that he had a theory of mind. It could still be said that he made contributions to the philosophy of mind in its contemporary sense. So this author is basically stating that through Locke's usage of the word mind, he might really be referring to soul, which was in British philosophy a more commonly used term at that point. So it's difficult to decipher what John Locke meant in his delineation between soul and mind, but his contributions are still well known and well documented. Second, in his educational philosophy, we come to toleration and skepticism, which promoted the idea to tolerate what one was at odds with, whether that is faith or impersonal beliefs or philosophies. So that's just to paraphrase from what John Locke meant. He was a very theological thinker in his time, and his philosophy had a lot to do with religion and its impacts on society. So a quote from one of the sources I used was, although toleration arose within the liberal tradition, so they mean liberal Western societies that we live in today, for instance, as a means of dealing with such conflicts, some individuals possessed a devout religious belief when confronted with beliefs or practice profoundly at odds with their faith, cannot conceive of toleration as a possibility. In such situations, the demand that these individuals tolerate to which their faith is at odds is likely to run up against a more personal and, for its adherents, eternal agenda. So, skepticism and toleration really means that through liberal society we have come to understand that though others have different beliefs, we don't have to necessarily disavow them or see them as bigots or blasphemous like a lot of religious zealots might have in the past or even today. And so the third philosophy of John Locke in education that I would like to discuss is the philosophy of freedom and reason, when he states, without liberty the understanding would be to no purpose, and without understanding liberty would signify nothing. So questions were raised as to what being a person that you are from one day to the next necessarily consists of. John Locke saw personal identity as the number one driver in a human's life, so education should be catered to that, and the freedom to choose what one is learning or how they go about learning it. For instance, the methods that we use to teach ourselves, whether that's reading or experiencing things in nature. John Locke believed that the individual knew best, and that learning useless knowledge in educational atmospheres that one would not use in their daily life was purposeless. So having liberty and choice was very important to John Locke. So the influence of John Locke that I want to discuss is very specific to the American Revolution era. Founders such as Jefferson, Madison, and Franklin were heavily influenced by him and his political philosophies. He's remembered as a an Enlightenment era intellectual with his individualistic ideals and philosophies, and many refer to his teachings as Lockean. If you've ever heard the term, that's who it comes from. And my critique of him comes at the end. He was an educationalist who sought to infuse reason, understanding, purpose into the field where he had experienced useless practices as a student. So a lot of his educational philosophy comes from his own experience in the educational world of Britain, where he was raised and educated. So this is a quote from one of my sources. Much time, he argued, in thoughts was lost learning useless information or practicing the art of disputation for no intellectual gain. And the natural love of learning was typically squashed under the threatening rod of the schoolmaster. So, in this we find that Locke was very critical of education due to his own experiences, which I find to be a more biased point of view. So that's why I'm criticizing him based on that. I think he should be more objective rather than subjective. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you learned something about John Locke and his educational philosophy.